So this is where you've been hiding from me? Say it. Just say you're done.
I was done the second you lied to my face.
I decided to surprise my wife at her new executive job. The lobby guard stopped me. Authorized personnel only. I said, I'm her husband. He laughed. Sir, I see your husband every day, and he's right there walking her out. I just nodded and left. An hour later, her CEO called me, voice shaking. What did you do to him? Do you realize what you just triggered? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. My name is Victor Hale, and I'm a private investigator. I've spent 15 years tracking down cheating spouses, embezzling employees, insurance fraudsters, and every other kind of liar you can imagine. I've seen it all, heard every excuse, watched people destroy their lives over nothing. I thought I was immune to it. I thought I'd learned to spot deception from a mile away. Turns out, I was blind when it mattered most. The morning started normal enough. Lydia left for work at 7:30, same as always. She kissed my cheek, told me she had back-to-back meetings all day, and asked if I'd pick up dinner on my way home. I said sure. She smiled that distant smile she'd been giving me for months now and walked out the door. I should have seen it coming. The late nights at the office, the business trips that seemed to multiply, the way she'd started dressing differently, sharper, more deliberate, the way she'd check her phone constantly and angle the screen away from me, all the classic signs I'd taught myself to recognize in other people's spouses. But you don't think it'll happen to you. You think your marriage is different, special, safe. I was working a case that morning, routine surveillance on a warehouse manager suspected of skimming inventory, boring stuff. My mind kept wandering to Lydia. She'd been so excited about her promotion to executive vice president at Meridian Consulting. 6 months ago, she'd been over the moon. Now she barely talked about work at all. Around 11, I wrapped up the surveillance and decided to do something spontaneous. Lydia had mentioned she missed our lunch dates from when we first got married. Why not surprise her? I could pick up sandwiches from that deli she loved and show up at her office. Maybe it would help bridge whatever gap had opened between us. The Meridian building was all glass and steel, towering over the financial district like a monument to corporate ambition. I'd been there once before, at the Christmas party. Lydia had introduced me to her colleagues with pride then. That was before the promotion, before everything changed. I walked through the revolving door carrying a bag of Italian subs and 2 iced coffees. The lobby was pristine marble, echoing with the click of expensive shoes. A security desk sat in the center, manned by a heavy-set guard who looked like he took his job way too seriously. Help you? He asked without looking up from his computer. I'm here to see Lydia Hale. She's an EVP on the 14th floor. You got an appointment? I'm her husband, just bringing lunch. That's when he looked up, really looked at me. His expression shifted from boredom to confusion to something that made my stomach drop. You're her what? Her husband, Victor Hale. He glanced at his computer screen, then back at me. A weird smile crossed his face. Not friendly, uncomfortable. Sir, I don't know what you're trying to pull, but Ms. Hale's husband comes through here every day, sometimes twice. I know him by sight. And you're definitely not him. The world tilted. Just slightly. Like that moment in a dream when you realize something's off, but you can't quite figure out what. What are you talking about? I've been married to Lydia for 8 years. The guard's smile faded. Now he just looked annoyed. Look, buddy, I don't know what kind of game this is. There he is now, he said, nodding toward the elevator bank. I turned. A man in an expensive suit was walking toward the exit with Lydia at his side. He had his hand on the small of her back. That possessive touch I knew so well because I used to do it. She was laughing at something he'd said, her head tilted back, totally relaxed, happy in a way I hadn't seen her in months. The man was tall, dark-haired, probably mid-30s, good-looking in that corporate shark kind of way. Everything about him screamed money and confidence. He was wearing a watch that probably cost more than my car. They didn't see me. They walked right past, maybe 15 feet away, close enough that I could smell Lydia's perfume, the same perfume I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. I stood there holding a bag of sandwiches and watched my wife walk out the door with another man. That's her husband, the guard said quietly. Dean Weston. He's some big-shot corporate strategist. Comes by all the time. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My investigator brain was screaming at me. The evidence was right there, impossible to deny. But the husband part of me, the part that had promised forever in front of all our friends and family, that part was drowning. Sir? The guard sounded concerned now. You okay? You want me to call someone? No, I managed. My mistake. Wrong building. I walked out, put one foot in front of the other until I was back on the street, standing in the lunch rush crowd. invisible and numb. I threw the sandwiches in a trash can and just stood there, trying to breathe. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Is this Victor Hale?" A man's voice. Tense. Worried. "Yeah. This is Richard Chen, CEO of Meridian Consulting. I need to know what you did to Dean Weston." I laughed. Actually laughed. "I didn't do anything to Dean Weston. I don't even know Dean Weston." "Don't lie to me." His voice dropped. "Dean just called me in a panic. Said someone connected to Lydia Hale was following him, making threats. He wants security increased. He's talking about police. So I'm asking you again, what did you do?" "Mr. Chen, I literally just found out Dean Weston exists, about 5 minutes ago, when I saw him walking my wife out of your building with his hand on her back." Silence on the other end. Long enough that I thought he'd hung up. "I didn't know Lydia was married," he said finally. Quietly. "Yeah, 8 years. Guess she forgot to mention it." "Mr. Hale, do you know how long they've been sleeping together?" More silence. "I have to go," he said. "How long?" My voice was harder now. The shock was burning off, leaving something cold and sharp behind. "I don't know the details, but Dean was promoted to senior strategist about 6 months ago, same time as Lydia's promotion. They've been working closely since then. Very closely." 6 months. Half a year of lies. Of coming home and kissing me hello while she smelled like another man. Of asking me about my day while thinking about him. Of sleeping next to me while dreaming about someone else. "Mr. Hale, whatever you're thinking..." "I'm not thinking anything. Thanks for the information." I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from fear, not even from anger yet, just from the sheer unreality of it all. This morning I'd woken up in my marriage. Now I was standing outside my wife's building, realizing I'd been living in a fantasy. I walked to my car and sat in the driver's seat for a long time, maybe an hour, watching people come and go from the Meridian building, executives and assistants and delivery people, all living their normal lives while mine imploded. My phone buzzed. Text from Lydia. "Stuck in meetings. Can you grab Chinese for dinner? Love you. Love you." I stared at those 2 words until they stopped meaning anything. Then I did what I do best. I started investigating. I drove to my office, a cramped second-floor space above a dry cleaner. I'd been running my private investigation business here for 12 years. Not glamorous, but it paid the bills. Or it had, back when Lydia and I were splitting expenses. Now she was making 3 times what I pulled in, and she'd started picking up more of the mortgage, the utilities, the everything. She'd made me dependent on her without me even realizing it. I fired up my computer and started digging. Dean Weston, age 36, Columbia MBA. Started at Meridian 3 years ago. Fast tracker. Known for aggressive client acquisition and strategic restructuring. No criminal record. No obvious red flags. Just another ambitious corporate climber who thought the rules didn't apply to him. I found his social media. Private. But I had tools for that. A backdoor into Instagram showed me exactly what I needed to see. Recent photos of Dean at expensive restaurants, exclusive clubs, charity galas, and in several photos, just barely visible in the background, was Lydia. They'd been careful. No couple shots. No obvious together pictures. But I knew what to look for. The same events. The same locations. The same dates. I cross-referenced with Lydia's calendar, the one she shared with me so I'd know when she was traveling. Every business trip lined up with Dean's travel schedule. Boston in March, San Francisco in April, Miami in May. They'd been together in every city, in every hotel. I found receipts, credit card statements I still had access to from our joint account that Lydia hadn't closed yet. Charges at couples' spas, romantic dinners, lingerie stores I'd never seen her bring anything home from. She'd been building a whole life with him, right under my nose. The anger hit then, not hot rage, cold fury, the kind that makes you think clearly instead of acting stupid. I'd seen plenty of betrayed spouses make the mistake of confronting immediately, of screaming and throwing things and giving their cheating partner ammunition for a messy divorce. I wasn't going to do that. I was going to be smart about this. I spent the rest of the afternoon documenting everything. Screenshots, saved emails, downloaded files. I built a case against my own wife the way I'd built cases against 100 strangers. Methodical, thorough, damning. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, I had enough evidence to bury them both. But I didn't want just evidence. I wanted revenge. I drove home and picked up Chinese food exactly like Lydia had asked. I set the table, opened a bottle of wine, put on music. When she walked in at 7:30, I was waiting with a smile. "Hey, babe," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "Thanks for dinner. I'm starving." She kissed my cheek, the same meaningless gesture she'd given me that morning. "How were the meetings?" I asked. "Exhausting, but productive. We're closing the Hartman deal next week." She sat down and started eating, talking about her day with the casual ease of someone who had no idea their world was about to end. I watched her and wondered how she did it, how she could lie so effortlessly, how she could compartmentalize so completely. "You okay?" she asked, noticing my stare. "Fine, just tired." "You should take a break. You work too hard." The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so sickening. We ate dinner, we watched TV, we went to bed. She fell asleep next to me, breathing softly, perfectly content. I lay awake until 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling, planning. Because I wasn't just going to expose the affair, that would be too easy, too quick. I was going to destroy them both, slowly, methodically, completely, and they would never see it coming. The next morning, I started putting my plan into motion. While you're here, hit the hype button, don't forget to subscribe and support this channel with a like. And tell us below, have you ever faced something like this? I went to work at 6 a.m. before Lydia even woke up, left a note saying I had early surveillance. She wouldn't question it. She never did anymore. My first stop was a coffee shop 3 blocks from the Meridian building. I'd scoped it out the day before. It was where Dean grabbed his morning coffee. Pretentious place that charged $8 for a latte and had motivational quotes painted on the walls. The kind of spot that attracted exactly the type of people who needed others to know they could afford $8 lattes. I sat in the corner with a newspaper and waited. Dean walked in at 7:45, right on schedule. He was on his phone, laughing at something, projecting that casual confidence that came from never being told no. He ordered something complicated with oat milk and 3 shots of espresso. I watched him, studied him. This was the man who'd been sleeping with my wife, who'd taken her on trips I'd thought were for work, who'd touched her in ways that should have been reserved for me. He didn't look like a homewrecker. He looked like every other ambitious executive you'd see in any city. Expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive everything. The kind of guy who measured his worth in quarterly bonuses and corner offices. I could have confronted him right there. Could have walked up and introduced myself, watched his face fall as he realized he'd been caught, but that would have been satisfying for maybe 30 seconds. Then it would be over, and they'd both know I knew, and they'd circle the wagons and I'd lose any advantage. No, I needed to be smarter. Dean got his coffee and left. I followed at a distance, watching where he went, who he talked to, how he moved through the world. I tailed him to the Meridian building, watched him swipe his badge and disappear inside. Then I made my first move. I had a contact at the city planning department, a guy who owed me a favor from when I'd helped his daughter find her stolen laptop. I called him up and asked about any recent permit applications or zoning requests associated with Dean Weston's name. "Let me check," he said. I heard typing. "Yeah, got one here. Commercial lease application for a condo conversion project in the warehouse district." "Why?" "What's the status?" "Pending review. Needs approval from 3 different departments." "Why do you care?" "Can you delay it?" "Victor, I can't just... 2 more favors. Your pick, anytime." He sighed. "Fine. I can probably lose the paperwork for a few weeks. Kick it back for additional documentation, that kind of thing." "Perfect." It was a small thing, barely noticeable. But Dean struck me as the kind of guy who liked to have multiple revenue streams, and I'd found evidence online that he was investing heavily in real estate. Delaying one of his projects wouldn't ruin him, but it would annoy him. Create friction. And friction creates opportunities for mistakes. Next, I called an old client, a journalist at the city paper who I'd helped track down a source for a corruption story. She owed me. "I need you to start asking questions about Meridian Consulting," I said. "Specifically about their bidding process for city contracts." "What am I looking for?" "Irregularities, conflicts of interest, anything that smells off." "Is there something there?" "I don't know yet, but if you start poking around, people get nervous, and nervous people make mistakes." "You're playing a dangerous game, Victor." "Not playing, working," she laughed. "All right, I'll make some calls. See what shakes loose." 2 moves made before 9 a.m. Small pieces on the board, but the game was starting. I spent the rest of the morning following Dean's digital footprint. His social media was a goldmine of information. He was one of those people who couldn't help but broadcast his life. Every business lunch, every networking event, every self-congratulatory post about closing deals and making moves. Arrogant, sloppy, perfect. I found out he was scheduled to give a presentation at a business conference in 2 weeks, something about strategic disruption in traditional markets. He'd been promoting it heavily, clearly saw it as a big career moment. I made a note. That presentation was going to be very interesting. At noon, I drove back to my neighborhood and parked across from my house. I'd installed a few security cameras 6 months ago after a rash of break-ins on our street. They were hidden in the eaves, motion-activated, recording to a cloud server. I'd almost forgotten about them. Almost. I pulled up the footage from the past week and started reviewing. Most of it was nothing. Me leaving for work, Lydia leaving for work, delivery drivers, neighbors walking dogs. Then I found it. Tuesday afternoon, I'd been out on a surveillance job. The timestamp showed 2:15 p.m. Dean's car pulled into my driveway. He got out, looked around to make sure no one was watching, and walked up to my front door. He had a key. He unlocked my door with a key and walked into my house like he owned it. Lydia appeared in the doorway seconds later. She kissed him, not a friendly peck. A deep, hungry kiss that made me want to put my fist through the computer screen. They disappeared inside. The cameras didn't cover the interior, but I didn't need to see what happened next. I knew. They were inside for 2 hours. When Dean left, his shirt was untucked. Lydia stood in the doorway in my robe, and waved goodbye like a housewife seeing off her husband. I watched the footage 3 times. Not because I needed to confirm what I was seeing, because I needed to let the rage settle into something useful. They'd been in my house, in my bed, while I was out working to help pay for that house and that bed. The disrespect was almost impressive. I downloaded the footage, backed it up in 3 separate locations. Then I kept digging through the week's recordings. Thursday morning, Dean showed up again, this time at 10 a.m., left at 1, Friday evening. Dean's car in the driveway from 6 to midnight. I counted it out. Dean had been in my house 5 times in the past week alone. 5 times that I'd been too stupid or too trusting to notice. My phone buzzed. Text from Lydia. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I stared at the message, wondered if she was actually working late or if Dean was taking her somewhere, wondered if she felt anything when she lied to me or if it had become so routine she didn't even register it anymore. I typed back, "No problem. Love you." Her response came immediately. "Love you too." Such easy words. Such meaningless words. I put down my phone and went back to work. I pulled up Dean's professional profile. He was on the board of 2 nonprofit organizations. He did pro bono consulting for a youth mentorship program. His bio painted him as a pillar of the community, a rising star, someone who gave back. All of it was performative. I could see that now. Every good deed calculated to enhance his reputation, every charitable act an investment in his personal brand. He was exactly the kind of man who would sleep with someone else's wife and feel justified doing it. I started researching his business dealings. Meridian Consulting did a lot of work with city contracts, infrastructure projects, technology upgrades, efficiency audits, big money, big competition. I found 3 contracts that Dean had been the lead strategist on. All 3 had been awarded to Meridian over competitors who'd submitted lower bids. That wasn't necessarily corrupt. Sometimes quality mattered more than price, but it was interesting. I made a list of the competing firms, started calling them. "This is Victor Hale from Business Integrity Review," I said, using a fake company name I'd used before. "I'm following up on the Riverside development contract from last year. Can you tell me about your bid?" The first 2 companies were professional, but cagey. Didn't want to badmouth a competitor. I didn't push. The third company, a smaller firm called Apex Solutions, was more talkative. "That bid was rigged," the owner said bluntly. "We came in 15% under Meridian's price with better deliverables. They got it anyway. When I asked why, I was told Meridian had superior relationships with key stakeholders." Relationships meaning what? Meaning someone at the city planning office was in their pocket, or someone on the selection committee, or both. I couldn't prove it, but I know what I saw. "Did you file a complaint?" I thought about it, but Meridian has lawyers on retainer who'd bury me in paperwork. Small firms can't fight that kind of firepower, so I let it go. "What if you had proof?" Silence. Then, "If I had proof, I'd burn them down." I thanked him and hung up. There it was. Not confirmation, but smoke. And where there's smoke, there's usually someone trying to hide fire. I spent the next several hours digging into the Riverside contract. I found the public bid documents, compared them to Apex's proposal, which they'd posted on their website as part of their portfolio. Apex was right. Their bid was better on every metric. Lower cost, faster timeline, better references. Meridian shouldn't have won. But they did, with Dean Weston as the lead strategist. I couldn't prove corruption yet, but I could make people start asking questions, and questions led to investigations, and investigations led to audits, and audits led to people getting nervous and making mistakes. I called my journalist friend back. "I've got something for you," I said. "Meridian Consulting and some questionable contract awards. Interested?" "Very. Send me what you have." I sent her the documents, not enough to prove anything illegal, but enough to write a story about potential conflicts of interest, enough to get people looking closer. "This is good," she said after reviewing the files. "I'll start making calls, see if anyone at City Hall wants to talk. Keep my name out of it. Obviously." I hung up and allowed myself a small smile. The pieces were moving. That night, I went home and cooked dinner. Lydia called at 8 to say she'd be even later than expected. Emergency meeting with a client. I didn't ask which client. Didn't need to. "No problem," I said. "I'll save you a plate." I ate alone, cleaned up, sat in the living room where Dean and Lydia had been together just days ago. The thought of them here, in my space, in my life, made my skin crawl. But I didn't let myself react. Didn't let the anger take over. I channeled it, used it. Lydia came home at 11. She looked tired but satisfied, the kind of tired that comes from a pleasant evening, not a stressful meeting. "How was the client?" I asked. "Difficult, but I think we got them on board." She kissed my forehead and headed upstairs to shower. I listened to the water run and thought about all the times she must have showered after being with Dean, washing away the evidence before coming home to me. When she came back down in her pajamas, I was watching TV. "You okay?" she asked. "You seem quiet." "Just tired. Long day." "Tell me about it." So I did. Made up stories about surveillance work and insurance fraud cases. She nodded along, only half listening, scrolling through her phone. "I'm thinking about taking on a new case," I said casually. "Corporate espionage thing, big company worried about leaks." "Sounds exciting." "Yeah, lots of digging into executive communications, email, phone records, that kind of thing." She looked up, just for a second. A flicker of something, concern, fear, crossed her face. "Is that legal?" she asked. "Depends on how you do it, but there are ways." She went back to her phone. "Well, be careful." "Always am." We went to bed. She fell asleep quickly, her breathing deep and even. I lay next to her and wondered how much longer we'd keep up this charade. How much longer she'd lie to my face while sleeping with someone else. Not much longer, I decided. My phone buzzed. Email from my journalist friend. "Made some calls. City Hall is nervous. Someone's going to talk. I can feel it." I smiled in the dark. Let them get nervous. Let Dean start wondering who was asking questions. Let Lydia start feeling the pressure of maintaining her double life. This was just the beginning. The weeks after the mediation blurred together. I signed the final divorce papers. Lydia moved out of state, taking a job with a company in Boston. I heard through mutual friends that she and Dean were trying to make things work long distance. I hoped they were miserable. My business picked up. Word got around that I'd successfully exposed a corporate fraud ring, even if I couldn't exactly advertise that I'd done it as revenge. New clients came calling, background checks, surveillance, the usual work. I threw myself into it. Worked 18-hour days, stopped eating regular meals, stopped seeing friends, stopped doing anything that wasn't work. My sister called one night. "I heard about the divorce," she said. "Yeah." "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You don't sound fine." "What do you want me to say? That I'm devastated? That my life fell apart? I already know that." "Victor, I'm handling it, in my own way. It's better than the alternative." She sighed. "Will you at least come to dinner this weekend? Just family. No pressure?" "Maybe." "That means no." "That means maybe." I didn't go to dinner. I spent the weekend following an insurance fraudster who claimed to have a back injury but was actually running marathons. Easy case, straightforward, no emotional complications. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Victor Hale?" A woman's voice, young, nervous. "Yeah. Who's this?" "My name is Jessica Brennan. I work at Meridian. Worked, I guess. They laid off half the staff last week." "I'm sorry to hear that." "I'm calling because I know what you did. To Dean, to the company. Everyone knows." My stomach tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. The leaked documents, the press stories, it was you. If you're calling to threaten me, I'm calling to thank you." I stopped. "What?" "Dean was terrible. He treated people like garbage, made promises he never kept, took credit for other people's work. Everyone knew it, but he was too connected to touch. Until you touched him." "I'm not sure what you want me to say." I just wanted you to know that what you did, it mattered. A lot of us were suffering under his leadership. Now we can finally move on. After she hung up, I sat there feeling strange. I'd spent so long thinking about revenge, about destruction, that I hadn't considered there might be collateral good from my actions. Maybe I'd helped people, even if that wasn't my intention, or maybe I was just trying to make myself feel better about the hole I'd dug. 3 months after the divorce finalized, I got a call from Gerald. "You need to see something," he said. "What?" "Just come to my office." I drove over. He had his laptop open, showing a news article. Local executive Dean Weston arrested on fraud charges. I read it 3 times to make sure it was real. The investigation into Meridian had continued after Dean left. The city audit had found more irregularities. Then the FBI got involved. They'd found evidence of kickbacks, falsified documents, and systematic fraud going back years. Dean had been indicted on 14 counts. "Did you know about this?" Gerald asked. "No, I knew there was fraud, but I didn't know it was this extensive. The feds are saying he could get 20 years. 20 years for what he'd done to me, to Tim, to all the people at Meridian who'd suffered under his leadership. Justice." "How do you feel?" Gerald asked. "I don't know." And I didn't. I'd wanted Dean to suffer, wanted him to lose everything. Now he was facing prison, and instead of triumph, I just felt tired. "You should know," Gerald continued. "They're probably going to want to talk to you. You were investigating him. You might have information they need." "I'll cooperate." A week later, 2 FBI agents showed up at my office. "Mr. Hale, we have some questions about Dean Weston." I told them everything, showed them my files, the timeline of hotel visits, the documents Tim had given me, the evidence of Dean's side business. They took notes, asked follow-up questions, treated me with professional courtesy but also suspicion, like they couldn't quite figure out if I was a concerned citizen or a vigilante. "Why did you investigate him?" one agent asked. "He was sleeping with my wife." "And that's it? You just wanted revenge?" "Initially, yes. But then I found evidence of actual fraud. At that point, it became about doing the right thing." The agent didn't look convinced, but they thanked me and left. A month later, I got a subpoena to testify at Dean's trial. The day I showed up at the courthouse, I saw Lydia for the first time since the divorce. She was sitting in the gallery, looking thinner and more tired than I'd ever seen her. Our eyes met. She looked away first. The prosecutor put me on the stand, asked me to walk through how I'd discovered Dean's relationship with my wife and how that had led to investigating his business practices. "And what did you find?" the prosecutor asked. "Evidence of systematic fraud, falsified documents, kickbacks, a pattern of deception that went far beyond his personal life." The defense attorney cross-examined me aggressively. "Isn't it true that you had a personal vendetta against Mr. Weston?" "Yes." "And isn't it true that you went to extraordinary lengths to destroy his career?" "I went to extraordinary lengths to document his crimes." "You stalked him, followed him, harassed his business associates?" "I investigated him. There's a difference." "Is there? Or are you just a jealous husband who couldn't accept that his wife found someone better?" I looked at Dean. He stared back, his face expressionless. "I was a betrayed husband who discovered that the man sleeping with my wife was also defrauding clients and taxpayers. What I did with that information was share it with journalists and eventually law enforcement. If that makes me a vigilante, so be it." The defense attorney tried to discredit me further, but the prosecutor had done a good job of establishing that regardless of my motives, the evidence I'd gathered was legitimate. I was dismissed after 2 hours of testimony. As I walked out of the courtroom, Lydia followed me into the hallway. "Victor." I turned. "What?" "I need you to know something." "I don't care what you need me to know." "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air, heavy, impossible. "Congratulations," I said flatly. "It's Dean's. I thought you should hear it from me." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You're having his baby, while he's on trial for fraud, while his entire life is falling apart. Perfect. He didn't do what they're saying he did. Not all of it. He did all of it and more. You just didn't want to see it. You destroyed him. He destroyed himself. I just made sure everyone saw it." She wiped at her eyes. "I thought you loved me." "I did. More than you deserved, apparently. I made a mistake, getting involved with Dean. But you became obsessed. You let revenge consume you. And you let a charming sociopath convince you to throw away 8 years of marriage. We all make choices, Lydia. Do you even care that I'm pregnant?" "No, not even a little bit. That baby is between you and Dean. I'm just glad I'm not part of it. I walked away and didn't look back. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Dean was convicted on 11 of 14 counts. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 months later. I didn't go. Didn't need to see it. The guilty verdict was enough. But I did hear through the grapevine what happened. The judge gave Dean 12 years in federal prison, 12 years of his life gone, 12 years to think about how his arrogance and greed had cost him everything. I should have felt satisfied, should have felt like justice had been served. Instead, I just felt empty. Revenge hadn't healed anything. It had just left me alone in an empty house with nothing but my anger for company. 6 months after Dean's sentencing, I was working a routine surveillance case when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Hale, this is Richard Chen. We spoke once before, the Meridian CEO. I hadn't thought about him in months. I remember. What can I do for you? I wanted to thank you. That caught me off guard. For what? For exposing the fraud at Meridian? After Dean was arrested, we conducted an internal audit. The damage he'd done was extensive. If you hadn't started asking questions, it would have continued unchecked. Eventually, it would have destroyed the entire company. I wasn't trying to save your company. I know, but you did anyway. We've implemented new oversight procedures, new ethical guidelines. We're rebuilding our reputation. And it's partly because you refused to look the other way. I was trying to destroy the man sleeping with my wife. Your motives don't change the outcome. You did the right thing, even if it was for the wrong reasons. After he hung up, I sat in my car and thought about what he'd said. I'd spent so long focused on revenge that I hadn't considered the broader impact of my actions. I'd exposed real fraud, helped get a criminal convicted, potentially saved jobs, and prevented future victims. Did that make up for the obsession? For the way I'd let revenge consume me? I didn't know. My phone rang again. This time it was Tim Reeves. Victor, I got a new job. That's great, Tim. It's at a consulting firm in Seattle. Better pay, better culture. They were actually impressed that I'd been a whistleblower, said it showed integrity. Glad things worked out? They worked out because you helped me. You made sure the story got told. Without that, I'd just be another disgruntled ex-employee. After that call, I realized something. I'd been so focused on what I'd lost that I hadn't noticed what had happened around me. People's lives had improved because of what I'd done, not because I was noble or heroic, but because sometimes revenge and justice point in the same direction. I went home that night and actually cooked dinner, first real meal I'd made in months, sat at the table alone and ate it slowly, tasting it for the first time in forever. Then I opened my laptop and started writing. Not a case report, just thoughts, reflections on everything that had happened, the marriage, the betrayal, the revenge, the aftermath. I wrote for hours, got it all out, every feeling I'd been pushing down for the past year. When I finished, I felt lighter, not healed, but less burdened. My phone buzzed. Text from Gerald. Drink tonight? My treat. I typed back, yeah, I'll meet you. We met at the same bar where he'd taken me after the mediation, ordered the same drinks. How are you doing? He asked. Better. Not good, but better. That's progress. I've been thinking about what you said, about revenge not healing wounds. And? You were right. Destroying Dean didn't fix what Lydia did. It didn't make me feel whole again. It just made me angry and alone. Gerald nodded. But it did accomplish something. Dean's in prison. The fraud was exposed. People who were being hurt by him aren't being hurt anymore. You're trying to justify it. No, I'm trying to understand it. What I did was personal and ugly, and probably crossed a dozen ethical lines, but the outcome wasn't entirely bad. That's a dangerous way to think. I know, but it's the truth. We drank in silence for a while. What are you going to do now? Gerald asked. Keep working. Keep moving forward. Try to rebuild something that looks like a normal life. You dating? God, no. I'm not ready for that. You might never feel ready. Sometimes you just have to try. That sounds like fortune cookie wisdom again. He smiled. Maybe, but it's still true. I went home that night and looked around my house. It still felt empty. Still felt like a space where a marriage had died. But it was mine. That counted for something. The next morning, I got a call from a potential client. Woman who suspected her husband was embezzling from their business. I can help with that, I said. But I should tell you, sometimes finding the truth makes things worse before they get better. I still need to know. All right, let's meet and talk details. I took the case, did the investigation, found evidence of embezzlement, reported it to my client. She thanked me through tears and filed for divorce. Another marriage ended, another betrayal exposed. I wondered if I was helping or just perpetuating cycles of pain, but I kept working anyway, because it was what I knew how to do. Months passed, then a year, then 2. The sharp edges of the pain dulled. Not gone, but manageable. I dated occasionally, nothing serious, nothing that made me want to risk vulnerability again. I expanded my business, hired an assistant, I took on bigger cases. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Lydia had a baby boy, that she was living in Boston, working for a smaller firm, struggling financially while Dean was in prison. I felt nothing when I heard that. No satisfaction, no sympathy, just distant acknowledgement that she was still out there, living her life. I ran into one of Lydia's old colleagues at a coffee shop one day. She recognized me. "Victor, hi, how are you?" "Good, you?" "Great, I actually wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For what you did. With Dean. He was awful to work with. After he left, the whole culture at Meridian changed. It's actually a good place to work now." "I didn't do it for you." "I know, but it helped anyway. Sometimes good things come from bad motives." She left, and I sat there thinking about that. Good things from bad motives. Maybe that was the best I could hope for. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Victor Hale?" "Yeah." This is Amanda Reeves, Tim's wife. I'm calling because Tim wanted me to reach out." "Is he okay?" "He's great, actually. We just bought a house. He got promoted. Things are really good." "I'm glad." "He wanted me to tell you that he credits you with turning his life around, that standing up to Dean, with your support, gave him confidence he'd been lacking. Tim did that himself. Maybe, but you helped, and we wanted you to know that we're grateful." After she hung up, I sat there feeling something unfamiliar. Not happiness, exactly, but something close to peace. I'd set out to destroy Dean, and I'd succeeded. But along the way, I'd accidentally helped people. Tim, the Meridian employees. Even my client's investigation had probably saved her from financial ruin. My intentions had been selfish and vengeful, but the outcomes had been more complicated than I'd imagined. That didn't excuse what I'd done, didn't make the obsession healthy or the actions right, but it meant I wasn't just a cautionary tale about revenge. I was something more complex. I was a man who'd been betrayed, who'd fought back too hard, who'd crossed lines he shouldn't have crossed, but who'd also accidentally done some good. I could live with that. 3 years after the divorce, I got invited to speak at a private investigators conference. They wanted me to talk about corporate investigations and ethical boundaries. The irony wasn't lost on me. I accepted anyway, flew to Chicago, gave my presentation to a room full of investigators. I talked about the importance of staying objective, about not letting personal feelings compromise an investigation, about knowing when to walk away, everything I'd failed to do with Dean. During the Q&A, someone asked, "Have you ever taken a case where you were personally invested? How did you handle it?" I paused, considered lying, considered giving them the textbook answer. Instead, I told them the truth. I investigated my wife's affair, found evidence of fraud by her lover, spent a year systematically destroying his career and reputation, eventually got him convicted and sent to prison. The room went silent. And if I'm being honest, I don't know if I'd do it differently. I crossed lines, I let revenge drive me, but I also exposed real crimes and helped people who were being hurt. So was it wrong? Absolutely. Would I do it again? Probably. After the conference, several investigators approached me, wanted to talk about similar cases they'd worked, times when justice and revenge had overlapped. One older investigator, a woman in her 60s, pulled me aside. "That took guts," she said, admitting that you weren't perfect. "I'm far from perfect. None of us are. But most people pretend. You owned it. That matters." Does it? It does to the people in this room who've struggled with the same thing. We all want to believe we're objective, that we don't let emotions drive our work. But we're human. Sometimes we fail. She handed me her card. "If you ever want to talk, call me. I've been where you are." I took the card and thanked her. Flying home, I thought about everything that had happened since Lydia's betrayal. The investigation, the revenge, the trial, the aftermath. I'd spent 3 years trying to move past it, trying to rebuild, but maybe moving past it wasn't the point. Maybe the point was learning to live with it, to acknowledge what I'd done and who I'd become because of it. I wasn't the same person I'd been before Lydia cheated. That version of Victor was naive and trusting. He'd believed in the permanence of marriage and the sanctity of vows. This version of Victor knew better, knew that people lied, that trust was fragile, that love could turn to hate in an instant, but this version also knew how to fight back, how to stand up for himself, how to refuse to be a victim. Was that worth the cost? The loneliness? The emptiness? I still didn't know. Back home, I threw myself into work again, took on 3 new cases, hired another investigator to help handle the volume. My business was thriving, my personal life was non-existent. One night, I got a call from my sister. "You need to come to dinner this weekend, no excuses." "I'm busy." "You're always busy, come anyway." I went, showed up at her house expecting just family. There were 8 people there, including a woman I'd never met. "Victor, this is Rachel," my sister said. "She's a friend from work." Rachel smiled. She was attractive, early 40s, with kind eyes and a wary expression that suggested she'd been through her own share of pain. "Your sister's been trying to set us up for months," she said. "I finally agreed to meet you just to shut her up." I laughed. "Honesty. I appreciate that." "She says you're a private investigator." "I am." "That must be interesting work." "It can be. Also depressing. I spend a lot of time documenting people at their worst." "What made you get into it?" I thought about how to answer that. The easy answer was that I'd fallen into it after college. The real answer was more complicated. I wanted to find the truth, even when people tried to hide it. "And do you? Find the truth?" "Usually, though sometimes I wish I hadn't." She studied me. "You've been hurt." "Is it that obvious?" "I've been hurt too. I recognize the look." We talked for hours. About work, about life, about failed relationships, and moving forward. When the night ended, she gave me her number. "I'm not ready for anything serious," she said. "But maybe we could get coffee sometime. Just talk." "I'd like that." I didn't call her for 2 weeks. Wasn't sure I wanted to open myself up again. But eventually I did. We got coffee, then dinner, then coffee again. It wasn't a relationship, just 2 damaged people trying to figure out if they still knew how to connect. One night, she asked me about my ex-wife. What happened there? She cheated. I found out. Things got ugly. How ugly? I told her. Everything. The investigation, the revenge, Dean's conviction. I expected her to be horrified, to make an excuse and leave. Instead, she said, "I get it." "You get it?" My ex-husband was abusive. Not physically, but emotionally. Spent years making me feel worthless. When I finally left him, I wanted him to suffer. I wanted him to feel the pain he'd caused me. Did you get revenge? No, I just left. Rebuilt my life. Eventually, I realized the best revenge was being happy without him. That's healthier than what I did. Maybe, but I still fantasize about it sometimes, about making him hurt the way he hurt me. So I understand the impulse. Do you think I'm a bad person? I asked. She considered the question seriously. I think you're a person who was badly hurt and reacted the way you thought was right at the time. Does that make you bad? I don't know, but it makes you human. We kept seeing each other, slowly, carefully. Two people who'd both learned to be cautious. 6 months in, she stayed over for the first time. This house feels empty, she said. It is empty. It's been empty for 3 years. Maybe it's time to change that. I don't know if I'm ready. Ready for what? For trusting someone again. For believing this won't end the way my marriage did. She took my hand. It won't end the same way. Because I'm not her. And you're not the same person you were with her. How do you know? Because the person you were with her didn't know how to fight back. Didn't know how to stand up for himself. This version of you does. Maybe you went too far with Dean. But you learned to protect yourself. That's not nothing. We lay in bed that night, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt like maybe I could move forward. Not forgetting what happened, not pretending it didn't change me, but accepting it and trying anyway. Thank you, I said. For what? For not judging me. We all have darkness in us, Victor. The question isn't whether it exists. It's what we do with it. What did you do with yours? I'm still figuring that out.